of the opinion that The Last of Us 2 didn't even need to happen, let alone a part 3, but it looks like part 3 is not going to happen, most likely. Let's go ahead and dive into this video and talk about it. According to Neil Druckman in this interview with Variety, okay, so I already feel like he's kind of checked out anyway, given what we've seen with him, what he's talked about with even the TV show, which I did catch some flack and got some backlash for my opinions on the TV show because I think the TV show was overrated. I don't think it was terrible. I don't think it was abysmal, but I think it was extremely overrated, and I much prefer the story from the game. So if I wanted to see the Last of Us story, I would rather just play the game again. But honestly, I kind of don't even really have a desire to do that. Everything that Neil Druckman has been doing with The Last of Us and all of that has just made me not even like the first The Last of Us anymore. I think in general that game was kind of overhyped anyway. I know. But here's why. I just think at the time, I think we've got so many cinematic games now that it's just, okay. But at the time, it wasn't as common. So it was like, okay, this is cool because the actual setting, the story, the characters. I mean, Joel, for example, was awesome. And Joel is way cooler in the game than he is in the TV show. But yeah, I probably won't. I honestly probably would never play it again, and that's fine. I did enjoy it when I first played it. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about with what he's talked about with Abby, because for example, Abby in The Last of Us Part 2, this gigantic, hulking, massive, gender ambiguous, supposed to be woman, but looks kind of like a dude character. So when they cast her in The Last of Us Part 2 TV series, and she's not big, and they're like, yo, why isn't she big? I just feel like it's all phoned in. I think it all is. There was like, they even told the cast not to play the game for the first The Last of Us series. They didn't want them to play the game. They made this whole, I don't know. It was just like, they just don't care. He's just getting his check and that's it. So what he said about Abby and why she isn't as big, he's like, oh, well, because in the way she can physically manhandle certain things, that element doesn't play a big role in this version because basically there's more drama and less action. And he's saying, I'm not going to say there's no action here. It's just, again, different priorities and how you approach it. Okay, so is she going to pummel Joel with a golf club or not? I mean, her whole point, that was all cringe. The disrespect to Joel was cringe. But anyway, he just doesn't really seem to care that much. Because I'm just thinking, man, if they were making a TV show off of something I created, I would want there to be some accuracy, especially with the characters I created and I cared about. But I think that it was more so with Neil Druckman. Obviously, I'm just speculating, but it seems like it was more so about just kind of the message he wanted to send with that game. And in a now scrubbed from the internet interview with a alleged Naughty Dog employee who remained anonymous, the decision supposedly to make the female characters more androgynous in The Last of Us Part 2, because they were, when they had actual physical models that they used who were very womanly, and then they purposefully made them look very androgynous, was supposedly, allegedly, to appease the transgender community, to make men feel better about themselves. Men pretending to be women feel better about themselves because, they can never look like a woman. So that supposedly was that. I think that was a big, huge part of Abby looking the way she did in general. Let's be real. For a woman to get as jacked as Abby was anyway is very difficult to do. Usually they got to be juicing, steroids, and even when they do, they still look more womanly than she did. So that's kind of insane. But I think in especially a post-apocalyptic situation, the amount of food that you have to eat to maintain that kind of mass, even just that alone, is just not practical to have, especially a female character looking like that. But I digress anyway. It's kind of beside the point. Here in the interview, they asked him about The Last of Us Part 3 because he mentioned The Last of Us Part 2 likely is going to be 2 seasons. He said that Mazin and Druckman always plan to split part 2 into more than one season. They're just not sure how many more there will be. It feels like we've got 1 or 2 more seasons, Mazin says. It's getting harder to make because every episode gets big. You don't want to wait 4 years for a 17 episode finish or whatever it is. So then, of course, then they asked about The Last of Us Part 3, and Druckman said, I was waiting for this question, and he was sighing, and he says, and then he says, I guess the only thing I would say is don't bet on there being more The Last of Us. This could be it. Seems like he's over it, right? And here's my thing. I mean, it kind of seems that way anyway, because he already has expressed in previous interviews talking about like Elden Ring, how that sort of gameplay was really appealing to him and how he kind of wanted to take a similar approach, if I'm remembering that interview correctly. And that's honestly kind of based, because I do think games like The Last of Us are too cinematic. I'm not even kind of. I'm very over the overly cinematic games. I have been for a while. They were kind of cool when they first started happening in the newer phases of like, think PS3, even in some like PS2. Look at Uncharted, for example. It was kind of neat at the time, but man, I've been ready for video games to just be video games again. I'm just over it with the over cinematic stories. And it looks like Neil Druckman kind of is too, because he's got his like intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet game that he's been working on, which I will admit looks like it's probably going to be woke trash. The gameplay might be good. It seems like he's probably going to take some sort of like Souls like Elden Ring open world inspiration, which would definitely be very different than The Last of Us. But it's just, here's the thing. I just think with this new project, he's probably going to be a lot more focused on this, and he's just over it with The Last of Us. Give him his money. The fans don't like it. They already inflated the sound of its success. I don't think that The Last of Us Part 2 was nearly as successful as it was portrayed to be, because of the fact that they did have such a massive budget and the fans didn't completely receive it great. Now, there were some people who still loved it. And hey, if you loved it, that's cool. But as somebody who played the first The Last of Us game, I just had no desire to play Part 2, and I didn't. And I plan on never doing so. Let's hope that doesn't happen. I don't know in what situation I would play that game. It would definitely not be a good situation, because it's not something I want to play. So yeah, I think he's like, okay, the damage is done. The fans are mad. If he does a Part 3, inevitably the fans are going to be mad again, because if he keeps on adding his stupid woke ideology stuff into it, then the original The Last of Us fans are still going to be upset. If he kind of changes that element, then the Last of Us Part 2 people might be upset. It's just a giant mess. I just don't see how anything good could come from a Last of Us Part 3. And again, those games are way too high budget. This probably is too, though. What is going on with these games with these monumentally massive budgets? I think it's insane. Let video games be video games. Give us some fun cutscenes here and there, but we don't need too many. And we don't need like all of this cutting edge mocap, all this kind of, to me, it's just like, I don't need all that. I just want a fun game. I want video games to be video games. That's why I like the Tomb Raider remasters. It's totally on par with what I like playing lately. Or even if you look at something newer, right, than just remastering an older title, Unicorn Overlord. That's a very modern game, but it's just I've been meaning to make a video about this, but yeah, it's like a strategy game. It's a game that actually is gameplay focused, right? That's the kind of games I like to see. Now, this, I think, is probably... We'll see. I think the gameplay possibly could be good, but I have no interest in this because it's just unappealing. It looks boring. The main character looks boring. I don't remember if they actually made this character some sort of fake gender, they, them, or if that was just what a meme on the internet that is actually plausible based off how the character looks, which is crazy because I think the actual model who modeled this character is a beautiful woman, even when she's bald. But they definitely like made her more masculine in the game versus what the actual model looks like and carries herself and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, maybe not anymore. Maybe that actress got all woke and is identifying as a zebra or something. I don't know. But anyway, there you have it for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. As always, if you want me to read the Bible to you, you can check out my Bible channel at Bible Time with Melanie Mack. Thank you all again. I'll catch you next time. And in the meantime, go boom.